Hello everyone, and now we are live. So thank you for being here. I'm quite excited with doing this live stream. And first things first, I'd like you to click on the like button and please comment, make a comment. I want to make sure we are all plugged in. So I want to see everyone's comments. I'm getting some thumbs up. Good. One person only. God. Aha, 3 people now. So yeah, please comment and write something to make sure you are watching. Do let me know where you are coming from. Write your city, university. You're a fine arts student, so write the university. And I'll be looking forward to this. Now, in today's session is going to be shorter than usual. We're just going to do theory today because there's a lot of problems that I notice when I visit faculties of fine arts pretty much all over the world. There are usually technical problems that need fixing. Okay, let's begin with a major technical problem. I've noticed that a lot of oil paintings, they turn totally, and by totally I mean totally brown. Alright? So I would like to address that problem today. We need to make sure that we learn to fix those issues. And I've prepared a kind of a slideshow that if you pay very attention to it, a lot of attention to it, it's going to improve your paintings dramatically, especially the conservation of your paintings, all right? Today's lesson is still vague. As we advance over the weeks, we will make it more and more complex. Now, I can see some beautiful comments already. Thank you very much. Yes, you can all hear me. Can you hear me loud enough, or do you want the microphone to be louder? So let me know if the volume is good, or if you want me to shout more. Joining from Dhaka. Oh, hello. Deepanjali, good to see you. Arindon, Badun, Rob, fantastic. So we are going to start the lesson. First of all, do you have any questions about supports or bases today? Just ask the question on the chat box below. Now, let's proceed. Let's begin. And just a quick one. If you are watching this lecture either on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, please jump to YouTube. Okay? This lesson was made to be on a horizontal format, so Instagram won't be good. You can only see part of the image. And over YouTube, I'll be able to check much better your comments and your questions. So, a little practicality. Jump to YouTube on the channel Nelson Ferreira UK. I have 2 channels, mind you. One is Portuguese. Do not join the Portuguese one for these live streams. Join the UK. Got it? Got it. So now let's proceed. We are going to start with supports. And what does a support mean? As the name says, it is what supports the painting. So, in order of quality, let's start with the worst one for oil paintings, okay? And the worst one of all is paper. Now, my dear ones, do not use oils on paper. This is the first lesson, okay? You are going to have huge problems if you use oils on paper. Even if you prime it. We will talk about primers in a second. The problem with paper is that it easily degrades with the oxidation of oil paints. So as oil paints dry, they oxidize. They become kind of, imagine, they become corrosive. They become almost like acid, you know? They oxidize and they release a lot of nasty chemicals that if they leach into the paper, they will destroy the paper. So do not use This, do not use paper to paint with oil paints. You got it? Now the second surface that a lot of people like to use is canvas, and many people use cotton canvas. So cotton canvases, they are alright. Make sure the cotton is very thick. So as a general rule, when you paint on canvases, avoid very thin fabrics. Avoid bed sheets. Do you know what I mean? Avoid fabrics that are so thin. Because what do you think is going to happen as the fabric ages? Write on the comment below. What happens to the flexibility of old cotton? Look at my t-shirt. I can do this, no problem. But what happens when the t-shirt is old? What happens if the t-shirt is 20 years old? What happens if I do this? Write on the comments below, and then I'm gonna check your answers. So, cotton is okay. Slightly better than cotton is linen. Traditionally, linen was considered much better than cotton, okay? Traditionally. But nowadays we know better. Because of modern science, we discovered linen has one advantage, and I'll tell you what it is, okay? Both cotton and linen, they have the same chemistry. They have the same chemical composition. They are both what? Tell me the name of the composition that creates the fibers. Tell me the name. It starts with a C. Write it down on your chat box below. It's called celluloses. And celluloses is a chemical that you cannot stop it from degrading. Listen, we live in a universe that has certain laws, the laws of physics, the laws of chemistry. You cannot stop celluloses from getting old the same way that you cannot stop meat from rotting if you take it out of the fridge, okay? Oh, lovely. Now I have some workers just doing noise over there. But anyway, tell me if it's too noisy, and if it is, I will jump to the next table. But you cannot stop celluloses from getting old. And what happens as fabrics get older is that they start breaking. They start tearing. So, as you guys wrote down, I see some comments here. For example, oh, hi Indonesia. Hello. It's good to also see people from Indonesia. So what happens is, as the fabrics get older, they lose flexibility and they can tear, they can rip. Question: when you stretch a canvas, do you keep it loose or do you stretch it? Write on the comments below. If you stretch it, what's going to happen to the old canvas? Write it down. So essentially, canvases cannot last very long. I know this comes as a surprise to all the fine arts students. There's always a big brouhaha when we talk about this, but actually canvases are one of the worst supports to use, and we will talk more about it later. So let's go back to our linen. The problem with linen is that although it might last a little bit longer than cotton, it doesn't last much longer. So nowadays it's known, thanks to modern science, that linen ages very quickly. Actually, I believe it's in about 20 years or so, it loses more than 75% of its strength. Not good. So you have a big problem when you are using linens, you understand? You have a big problem when you are using canvases in general. Now, I promised you that I was going to give you solutions and not just problems. Instead of linen, instead of cotton, if you want to use a canvas, my biggest recommendation is to use, surprise, polyester. Yes, and polyester has got several advantages over linen and over cotton. Polyester, what is the chemical composition of polyester? So if you write it down, make sure it starts with the letter P. So the chemical composition of polyester. Polyester is a kind of plus. I'm not going to tell you, you need to write it down. Yeah, it's a kind of plus something. Write it down. I'm waiting. Yes, it is plastic. And because it is plastic, it's very well known that plastic lasts hundreds of years. Hundreds of years, even if you throw it in the ocean. Now Imak is kept inside a museum. It's gonna last thousands of years without any problem. So by far, between the different kinds of canvases, and I've selected 3 types. So you have cotton, linen, and polyester. By far, polyester is the best one. Again, in the past there was some debate if polyester would be absorbent enough to accept the paint or not. But nowadays we have canvases made in polyester that are better than any canvas ever made in either cotton or linen. Okay? So it's important that you use polyester if you can. And you can prepare it yourselves with a very strong acrylic primer. We will talk about it later. Now, I've got a comment here about the use of watercolor. Someone from the Portuguese speaking world asked, em aguarela? Hello? Hello, Instagram user. I cannot see your name because, yeah, Ecam only lets me see the names of people on YouTube. But you asked a question about watercolor. This lesson is not going to be so much about watercolor. I'm happy to answer though. In watercolor, you need a paper. Let's go back to the papers. Let me show you an image of a paper. Yes, you need a paper that is ideally 100% cotton. Okay, so don't use wood pulp papers because they degrade much faster. Try to use a paper that is 100% cotton or linen, one of the two. There is also a third option, which are the Japanese papers. They're absolutely spectacular. And papers made from the mulberry tree. Yes, the mulberry. You know, the tree that gives those fruits that you can eat. It's like a blackberry tree. So papers made from mulberry tree, they also last many thousands of years. Just avoid cheap papers. Avoid any paper that is not acid free. Just don't use it. It will turn brown. Avoid any paper that is too cheap to be good. Make sure it's acid free. That's the #1 criteria, by the way. If you have to choose one paper, acid free is the most important thing. The second most important thing should be cotton, not wood pulp ideally. Or linen, if you can pay for more. Usually linen papers are those very expensive handmade papers. Okay, in Britain I know of some companies that still make paper by using 17th, 18th century techniques, and that paper is the best. Cotton, linen, or mulberry papers, usually from Japan, and they're usually quite thin and delicate, but surprisingly strong, because the mulberry tree creates amazing papers. Very sturdy, all right? So the questions are going to be more for acrylics, oils, and so on. We will do different sessions on watercolor. Now, after we spoke about polyester canvas, which is by far the best canvas to use from the ones I've spoken so far, we have now something even, perhaps, arguably better, which is wood. If you prepare the wood, if you isolate the wood, if you stop the wood from leaching resins or acid or colors into the painting, so you need to prepare the wood, okay? You need to isolate it. But if you prepare wood, wood is one of the very best supports that you can use for painting. One of the very best. There's a problem with wood, obviously. It's heavy, very heavy, so it only works for small paintings. If the painting is bigger, it will be impossible to carry. I mean, it's just too heavy. And to make things worse, if you have large paintings, they will warp, so they will curve. Wood is not good for large paintings. Nonetheless, it was used very successfully in the past. We have paintings, I just picked this random one today by the Van Eyck brothers, Jan van Eyck. And we have paintings that are 700 years old and they just look absolutely spectacular. So this kind of paintings lasts for a very, very long time, and they were painted on wood. And remember that these paintings were made with materials that are much inferior to the materials we have nowadays. So nowadays we can actually make paintings that last much longer than some of these very old paintings. Much, much, much longer. Understood? So why do we have old paintings that look like this? Almost 1,000 years old soon. They look spectacular. And then why do we have contemporary art that looks like that? Totally cracked, totally broken, totally destroyed. Write on the comments below, why do you think we are having this problem nowadays? Unfortunately, it's technique. Technique decayed like crazy. I find it shocking that in most faculties of fine arts they don't even teach the basics of good technique. So I want to repeat what I've just said 2 minutes ago. We have much better paints than any of the paints used by the old masters. Trust me, I've been working on this field for over 20 years. And I work a lot with conservation departments of several universities around the world. Our paints nowadays, our materials nowadays, are way better than anything that the old masters had. But the old masters' paintings, they last hundreds of years without any problem. And contemporary paintings, sometimes after 5 years, they start cracking and they turn brown. Interesting. We need to talk about it. And we shall talk about it. That's why you are in this lesson. Now, there are comments here, very interesting ones. By the way, make sure you press the like button straight away. Let's make this video more viral. It will help your friends to find it very, very, very easily. The more likes I get right now, the more the algorithm understands this is a relevant lesson to you and to your colleagues. So, moisture. Let's talk about moisture. Moisture is a huge enemy of any of the materials that I've spoken so far, except polyester. Polyester is resistant to moisture. That's another reason why we should use polyester canvases. If you want to paint with a canvas, then use polyester. Let me show you one thing. Wood is also sensitive to humidity. Wood can easily rot if you have too much humidity in the room. Not only it warps, but it rots. So make sure that when you are priming the wood, make sure that when you are preparing your painting, you prime all around the panel. You prime the front, but you also protect the back and also protect the sides. That will also stop some of the insects from starting to chew onto the wood, because insects don't really like the taste of primer. Most primers, they're not tasty. So insects go away. So remember that when you work with wood, you need to isolate it. We will talk about it in a second. But there is something better than wood. So please tell me, what is the material that is like wood but it doesn't warp? Write it down on the comments below. It's a material that is made from wood, it doesn't warp, and it's a spectacular quality that will last perhaps even longer than wood if it's if it's a proper one, if it's a good quality one. And the material that is even better than wood, the substance, the special thing that might change your life, is plywood. So plywood has the advantage of not warping. Plywood does not bend, does not deform like wood does. But there is a problem. Like everything in life, you need to know what you are doing. You need to study, okay? There's different kinds of plywood. The only plywoods that are the ones that are made for things like building ships, for example. So it should be a plywood that is very, very resistant to moisture. And there is a kind of plywood that is called marine plywood. Let me see if I can type the answer here on the chat. Marine plywood is better than wood. Okay? Marine plywood is used to construct ships, but it shouldn't be totally waterproof, no. Because when you paint with your paint, you want the paint to stick to the plywood, you know. If plywood was totally waterproof, then the paint wouldn't bond, and after a few months or years it would start peeling off, it would start coming off. So you don't want plastic, you know, you don't want to paint on plastic. You want something like wood that still absorbs water, but you want a kind of plywood that is resistant to aging. And marine plywood is amazing. I think I'm confusing you, so let's do one thing. Let's start again. The worst support for oil paintings or for acrylics is paper. This is the worst one. Not good. Don't use it, okay? Just don't. The second worst is canvas. Maybe cotton canvas is the worst one, but if your cotton is very, very thick, if it's very, very strong, then it's decent, it's acceptable. But it's not amazing, eh? Then, maybe slightly better than cotton is going to be linen. This is debatable. Like I've told you, linen also has its drawbacks. It ages faster than we thought, because scientific testing has shown that linen does not really last long. Okay, it still gets weak after a few decades. Traditionally, they say it's more resistant to humidity than cotton, but in reality, if you wet linen, the changes in size are even bigger and worse than in cotton. So for example, once I tried to glue a linen canvas onto a board. So I applied a glue that had water, a water-based glue, and the painting shrunk so badly that I had to cut the wooden board afterwards to put it back to size because the linen shrank dramatically. So linen is also not perfect, okay? Much better than linen, and arguably one of the best supports for you to paint on, it's polyester. And even better is if you put the polyester on top of wood, if you stick it together, okay? Then we also have wood that can be a good support to paint on. Remember that wood created some of the oldest paintings in the world that still exist in very good condition. Canvas didn't. So the problem with canvas is this: it creates a lot of cracking on the paint films because as the paint ages, it becomes less flexible. And canvases, they move too much. Because they move too much, they crack the painting. So, even better than wood is marine plywood. Make sure it's the marine type. And now I'm going to show you heaven on earth. Are you ready for heaven on earth? Write down the comments. If you're not ready, close your eyes. But I'm going to show you something that is the creation of modern science. Something that is used to be outdoors, so it is weather resistant. It's amazing. I mean, with modern technology, we have materials that are 50 times better than anything the old masters had. I really want you to realize that, because there's a lot of nonsense online. We live in an age of great ignorance, as you know. There's a lot of rumors all over the internet. Conspiracy theories, most of them, some are true, most of them aren't. And one of the conspiracies that has been rumored, not just online but also offline, this is an old conspiracy theory, is that the old masters like the Van Eyck brothers, they had special chemicals, they had special tricks and secrets, they had special paints, and that's what explains the spectacular permanency of their paintings. Now, we know this is not true. We conducted chemical tests on these paintings. We know pretty much exactly how these paintings were made. And the difference between the longevity of the old masters' paintings and the absolute ridiculous self-destruction of most contemporary paintings, the only difference is technical knowledge. The old masters knew how to apply things. They knew how to paint in a way that paints didn't crack or peel off. Contemporary artists, they're always doing mistakes. So the objective of these lessons is to try to bring back some of the knowledge. Are you ready for heaven or not? Matteo is ready. So I'm going to show you heaven. And heaven is a material called dye bond. Dye bond, it comes in all colors and sizes and so on, but dye bond is essentially aluminium, and the aluminium has got a plastic core. So it's two sheets of aluminium with black plastic in the middle to make it lightweight, because aluminium is very heavy, you see. And also aluminium has got some of its own problems. We won't waste time of the lesson now discussing that, but it's better to have dye bonds. It's way better than aluminium. Dye bonds is used nowadays to make signs that are outdoors. So you know when you're traveling and you see a huge metal sign saying pub, or an old cafe, or an advertisement that you see in the highway, those huge billboards that are printed, it's usually nowadays dye bond, because it can last forever under the rain, under the sun. It doesn't oxidize, it doesn't rust. Do you understand? And why do we like it? On top of that, it takes the paint. Yeah, you heard me right. So if you sand dye bond down with fine sandpaper, maybe a grit 400, you know, the metal sandpaper, the black one that is used, the wet and dry sandpaper that is used to sand down metal, the one you dip in water and then you use the sandpaper. If you sand the surface to make it less shiny, don't remove the color, okay? You don't want to see the color of aluminium. This is important, okay? It's so important. I'm gonna put back the camera. Pay attention. Do not sand it down so much that you start seeing the color of the aluminium. If you start seeing the gray color of aluminium, throw away the panel. You cannot paint on it. You cannot paint on aluminium. It's impossible, okay? Aluminium oxidizes in just a few seconds when it's exposed to the atmosphere, and the layer of oxides, it's actually good for the aluminium because it protects it, and then it stops the aluminium from oxidizing further. It's just on the surface, but that layer of oxides does not allow the paint to stick to the aluminium. Do you understand? You cannot paint on aluminium panels if they are not specially prepared. So how do they make dye bond? It's very simple. They do it in a factory, and they do it in vacuum. They sand down the aluminium, so they clean the surface, and then they apply a special paint in the vacuum. And because there is no oxygen, the aluminium does not oxidize, so it takes the paint. That's why you have these dye bonds with all different colors, you know, brown, white, black, yellow, gray. It doesn't matter, but it has to be done in vacuum. But once the dye bond is painted with any color that you can buy, it's ready to take your painting on top. Do you understand? You just need to do one thing, I repeat. Wet the dye bonds, and with sandpaper, fine grit, something, I recommend 400. Wet and dry black sandpaper. Sand down the surface, gently sand it until it becomes frosted, until it becomes matte. Then clean it very well with rubbing alcohol or something, methylated spirits. Clean the surface to degrease it, remove all grease, all dust, everything. Wash it and clean it, and then apply your normal primer. This is one of the best surfaces to paint on in the world, and it's not expensive. If you want the texture of canvas, then get a nice polyester canvas. Now you know that polyester is better, and glue it to dye bond. Then you get the best of both worlds. You get the waterproof resistance of both polyester and dye bond. Dye bond will not oxidize, it will not rust, it will not warp. It also doesn't expand and contract with fluctuations in humidity or temperature, so your paint shouldn't crack. This is important, okay? Your painting shouldn't crack because of that. It's very stable, the support. And you can have the nice texture of canvas, because if you protect the canvas from the back with dye bond, it becomes stronger, it becomes more resistant to aging and to the effects of time. So any questions, please write down on the chat box below. And I'm going otherwise to proceed to the next chapter. So you have an overview now of some of the base materials to paint on. Don't paint on paper, just stop that nonsense once for all, okay? It's really not good. Yeah, we have paintings from the 19th century that were made on paper with oils, and they are still in museums. Yeah, we have Van Gogh paintings. They were made with cheap cotton canvas, and they are still perfect in our art museums. Guys, do you have any idea how many times those paintings were restored? Ha! You have no idea. Those paintings, they need an army of restorers to keep them alive. Otherwise, those paintings would be long dead and buried. If you use cheap, bad materials, and again, it's not about price, but it's about quality, and it's about your knowledge. If you use bad, cheap materials, your paintings wouldn't last. Sometimes they don't even last 20 years. Let me tell you a story. There is an artist, which I'm not going to say the name, very famous, extremely famous in Scandinavian countries. He sells his paintings for a lot of money. And he was forced to pay millions in compensation, millions, because his very expensive paintings started melting. They started dripping. Yes, you heard me right. The paintings, they looked dry and perfect, but after a few years they started crying. They started exuding an oil, and they started tearing up, and eventually they deformed. This is not uncommon. I did a series of tests in my art studio, which will be the topic of another lesson, where I compared all the different brands of oil paints, and I saw how the paint was aging. It was shocking beyond belief. Okay? Actually, let me show you one thing. I believe that I can share screen with you. I really want to show you this because it's it's important. After this lesson, I want you guys to go to my YouTube. I don't know if we can see this big or small, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you a video that I did long ago, and it's called Titanium White Oil Paints Brand Comparison, Yellow and Cracking. Alright, you've got the title here. It's also in my channel. I would like everybody to watch this video and look what happens to the whites. Even on this photo, you guys can already see this. What happened was, let me accelerate. It's shocking beyond belief. All of these whites used to be white when I first squeezed them from the tube. Some of them started going yellow in less than 10 days. Did you hear me? Less than 10 days. And these are some of the world's most expensive oil paints. It's shocking beyond belief. And white is by far the most important of all the paints that exist, of all the colors. It's by far white. Okay? So I hope you guys could see this, because it's just mind-blowing. Now I have a question here. Hello, Rob. Good to kind of see you, to hear you. If dye bond is suitable for very large paintings, suitable is the word, but it's not ideal. If you are painting really large, then unfortunately nothing beats canvas. Another reason to make sure it's polyester canvas, okay? Because polyester does not deform as much as cotton or linen. Apart from all the things I said before, it lasts longer, all of that. But that's especially important on very large paintings. The bigger the painting, the more it needs to be polyester if you are using canvas. Guys, there's only one reason why canvases became popular in Europe after Renaissance. When did canvases become popular, by the way? Write down the century on the chat box below, because I want to hear it, I want to read it. But tell me, small paintings were the standard in the ancient world. If you look at Byzantine icons from the 6th century, 7th century, they're usually small. They're not much bigger than, an A4 sheet of paper. If you look at most Renaissance paintings, the Mona Lisa, it's not very big, they were easy to carry, and they were usually painted on wood, so they couldn't be very large. That would be heavy, and they would warp if they were too large. Lots of problems. So paintings were usually small. And then there was a revolution in the history of art. In which century did we see an explosion in size? And what was the name of the artistic style? Let me know. Write it. I'm waiting for you. Now, we've discussed most of the supports, and regarding the size of paintings, some people are writing Impressionism. No, Impressionist paintings are also usually not very large. For example, all the great historical academic paintings, which are older than Impressionism, they were much bigger. If you go to world-class museums like the Louvre or Musée d'Orsay in France, or the Prado in Spain, or the Vatican museums, the Hermitage. I've never been, but I assume it's amazing. I mean, I've seen photos of paintings that are kept in Russia at the Hermitage. Some of the largest paintings in the world were done there. But there is who has been to Venice? There is the Doge's Palace and all of that, etc. And if you look up into the ceilings, you're going to see some huge paintings. And they belong to the period of Baroque. And yes, Rob, congratulations. You did answer correctly. And the answer is indeed the Baroque period. So when we have someone answering correctly, Rob, this is for you. I hope you could hear the clapping. So the Baroque period, mostly the 17th century, that's when we had an explosion in the size of paintings. All right? Congratulations. And now I can see that more people are answering also correctly. So for all of you to also receive a thank you. What is the period when paintings exploded in size? And some of you replied the Baroque period, 17th century. Applause. Now we're going to talk about sealers and primers. Sealers and primers are very important to make sure that our corrosive paints do not attack the support. Okay? If you paint with oils directly on wood, not only will the oil paints attack the wood, because wood is also cellulose, remember. And cellulose is very fragile. It oxidizes very easily with the acids and with all the nasty chemicals that oil paints release when they are drying. So you need to protect the wood from the oil. But the opposite is also true. You need to protect the oil paint from the wood. Because with humidity, the wood starts releasing this brown color that would eventually cut through the paint layer and stain it and make it brown. You need also to protect the painting from the wood. For that we have sealers and we have primers. And the first one I'd like to show you, shockingly, poor rabbit. It's called rabbit skin glue. And rabbit skin glue, it's gelatin. It's animal glue. Don't worry, they don't kill animals on purpose to make the glue. This is actually the leftovers of the meat industry. So every time they, every time we eat steak or pork or chicken, and I'm sure I'm now insulting all the religions in the world, my goodness me. But anytime you eat any kind of animal, maybe this is the best way to describe it, you have the leftovers, you have the bones, you have the skin, you have the cartilage, you have the teeth, the intestines, you have all kinds of things that are not usually eaten or edible. So animal gelatin creates actually a traditional glue, and as you can see, it's sold in crystals, as you can see on the left. It looks like sugar, doesn't it? Brown sugar. So you need to put those crystals in water to soak, and then you gently warm up the water. Usually you leave the crystals overnight, about 10 hours in water or more, until they swell up, until the gelatin absorbs the water. And once it's swelled up and soft and tender, you warm it up. And when you warm it up, you end up with this liquid, which is, it's essentially animal soup. It's like chicken stock, you see. So no, it doesn't come from little rabbits. Nowadays, it's all kinds of animals, and it's the gelatin. I want to ask you a question. Although animal glue was the most traditional glue used in the past, what nowadays we call rabbit skin glue, is it the best material that exists? So tell me, does animal gelatin, does it last long in the environment? Is it rot-proof, for example, or does it start rotting very quickly? Does it decay quickly, or does it last forever in your kitchen? You know, when you make meat soup, does the soup last months and months and months in your kitchen, or does it go off very quickly, sometimes even within a few hours, if you leave it in a warm environment? Again, write me the answer. These answers are to make sure you're not sleepy. I want to make sure everyone is still listening and still enjoying the lesson. Write it down. Give me some feedback. So, rabbit skin glue. There was another glue that was extremely popular, mostly in Eastern Europe, in the Byzantine world, and it comes from fish. It's fish glue. Again, like fish soup, you know. But the best fish glue comes from a fish called sturgeon. Caviar comes from sturgeon, okay? So caviar are the eggs of sturgeon. In this case, we use only a small part of the sturgeon, which is called an air bladder. And an air bladder, it's those filaments that you see in here. You do exactly the same thing that you do with rabbit skin glue. You put the bladder in water, you allow it to swell up, then you warm it up, and you end up with a jelly very similar to the one we see here of the rabbit skin glue. And absolutely, so Cameron, Arindam, you both said that it easily rots, animal glue, didn't you? Congratulations. So animal glue again is not the ideal substance to seal the wood or to protect the canvas. It was used in the past because it was the best thing that the old peoples had. But nowadays we have much better things. Now, if you want to go traditional, if you are a traditionalist, or if you want to experience old recipes, why not? I did it many times. You need to warm up the glue in bain-marie. Bain-marie is this: you have a double container. The bigger container has got hot water. The smaller container inside, it has your animal glue already swelled up. You know, you leave the crystals swelling up overnight in water, and then you warm them up in this hot water. And don't use a fork, by the way. This photo isn't very good. It's better to use a wooden spoon, because sometimes forks leave a lot of metallic contaminants. If you're scratching the surface all the time, you don't want that. Use a wooden spoon, okay, for your bain-marie. And make sure that the water never goes above 50-something degrees Celsius. Why? Why don't you boil the animal glue? The reason is that if you boil the animal glue, it loses its power. You are decaying it, you are removing its adhesive qualities. So you want to make sure it never goes over roughly 50-something degrees Celsius. How do you know? Put a finger inside. If it starts burning you, it's already more than hot enough. Okay? You just want a very hot bath kind of temperature. So this is how you prepare animal glues. Now, but much better than animal glue is PVA glue, obviously. And PVA glue, again, it's a kind of plastic. It's also water-based. And you really want to make sure that it's pH neutral. Okay? pH neutral. It costs a little bit more money than normal, not very good PVA glue. But the pH neutral is the only type that is good enough to make permanent artworks. Artworks that will last for many centuries. So the PVA glue you dilute with water, and then if you want, why not, you can paint it on top of your marine plywood, or you can apply a thin layer of PVA glue on top of wood. You are sealing the wood, you are sealing the plywood. And PVA glue should last thousands of years if it's pH neutral. That's what you use to prepare the canvas, you know, to isolate the canvas. If it's not prepared already from factory, you need to prepare it yourself. So first apply 1 or 2 layers of diluted PVA glue, leave them to dry, of course, between layers, and then later you can apply your primer. You apply your primer. So now we will talk about primers. And primers are the substances that we use to really prepare the canvas or the wood or the dye bond or whatever you want to paint on, to prepare them for the paint. Again, in the past, the primers would have been traditional, so they would have mixed rabbit skin glue, already diluted, of course, in hot water and so on. They would have mixed it with chalk powder or with gypsum powder to create a white primer, and this was the kind of material that was used to make these paintings. Okay, so the Van Eyck brothers paintings and all the late medieval Flemish paintings, they were made with this kind of materials. They used rabbit skin glue and traditional gesso. These paintings survived because the artists really knew, what they were doing. Contemporary artists are usually too sloppy. they don't care enough. So as a result, our paintings are not lasting. But they used these traditional materials. They did use meat soup because rabbit skin glue is nothing more than animal gelatin. And like you said before, it rots very easily. And yet, these paintings lasted for centuries and centuries and centuries. So this is the traditional gesso. And then you apply, see, you warm it up in bain-marie. You have 2 metal containers. The outside one has got the hot water. The inside container is just warm. And then you apply the gesso onto anything you want, really, as long as it's rigid. So wood is the support for this kind of gessos. Do not use these gessos on canvas because they crack. This kind of gesso cannot be used on canvas, ideally, okay? Traditional gesso, it's only for wood, because wood does not bend, it stays rigid, so it doesn't crack. But much better than traditional gesso, obviously, much better, is the acrylic ground. So if you have an acrylic ground, an acrylic primer, then you don't have any of the problems of traditional gesso. Okay? Acrylic grounds don't crack if they're good quality, of course. Acrylic grounds don't change color, they don't turn brown. Acrylic grounds, they're kind of waterproof, you know, they resist to humidity, they don't rot. Acrylic grounds have so many advantages over the traditional grounds that really and truly I don't recommend that you use traditional grounds. I don't recommend this unless you want to try historical recipes, just for curiosity. But in terms of durability, nothing beats acrylic grounds, okay? And finally, one last option, acrylic grounds, they're good to paint with acrylic paints on top, and they're also good to paint with oil paints on top. Now, rest assured, if the acrylic ground is really high quality, oils will stick to it, okay? There was some debate for many decades. Maybe oils don't stick to acrylic ground, maybe they will peel off, maybe they will... No, adhesion is usually pretty good because these acrylic grounds, what we call acrylic gesso, make sure when you say gesso, you always say acrylic gesso if it's an acrylic, okay? If you just say gesso, we assume it's a traditional gesso. This is a real gesso, the traditional recipe with rabbit skin glue or fish glue. That's a real gesso, like this one. And you have to warm it up, etc. Acrylic gesso is something else. I really don't like the fact that they use the word gesso, because the word gesso had a meaning for many centuries, and the meaning was perfect, and now we changed the meaning. We confused it. I prefer when we call it acrylic primer. It's a primer because it's the first layer. But there's another option now, which is an oil painting primer. An oil painting primer is made exclusively to paint with oils on top. You cannot use acrylics on top of an oil painting primer because they are going to peel off. It might take many days, many weeks, many months, many years, but it will peel off if you use acrylics on top of the wrong primer. So oil painting primer is exclusively for oil paintings, okay? But acrylic primer can be for both. It can be for oil paintings and also for acrylic paintings. You got it? So this is now the time to ask any questions that you might have. We made an overview of the most important supports for painting. I recommend the contemporary materials. I recommend you guys use things like polyester canvas, for example, or dye bond, Or even better, polyester canvas glued on top of dye bonds. I briefly explained how to prepare the dye bonds. We will have a separate lesson someday where I will demonstrate for you. Today it's only theory. In the next upcoming lessons we will start with the practice. Then we briefly talked about isolation layers. When you are painting with materials like wood or canvas, you need to seal them off from the oil paint, otherwise the oil paint will attack and destroy the canvas or the wood. And vice versa. The wood will also attack and destroy the paint. So you need a special protection. We call that an isolation coat or a sealer. I recommend PVA glue, dilute it, apply 1 or 2 coats, leave it to dry, and then followed by an acrylic primer. Okay? But if you want to go traditional, you use rabbit skin glue, dilute it, apply a thin layer, leave it to dry, and then several layers, usually 7 or 8 layers, of traditional gesso. Remember that traditional gesso cracks very easily, so it can only be painted on top of wood. You only apply traditional gesso, usually it's just on wood. Don't use it on canvas, it can easily crack. And don't use it on dye bond because you don't need it and probably it will not stick very well. Okay? So I recommend PVA glue and I recommend an acrylic primer. I also mentioned a video that I want everybody to go and watch. So remember the video. I'm now gonna... Okay, remember the video. You want to make sure that you are going to watch this video. Titanium white oil paints, brand comparisons, yellowing and cracking. If you have to make one big difference now in your painting technique, start by choosing a high quality white. Because if your whites turn brown, your paintings will quickly turn brown. White is the most important color in oil painting. We have to make sure that it doesn't turn brown very easily. In the next few lessons, we are going to learn much more. This is just the beginning. By the way, do comment because I want to make sure that I'm continuously exchanging information with you back and forth. Write something on the comments below, ask questions. This is now your opportunity. We are about to end the live stream. But before we end it, I want to show you one thing. For the students, my art students, that are on Instagram or they are watching live on LinkedIn or on Facebook, my page, I would like you all to subscribe to all of these pages, okay? So let's start with my Facebook page. I would like you to support it by subscribing to Nelson Ferreira Art Classes. This is my professional English page on Facebook. I still don't have many followers because I never really bothered with Facebook or Instagram. I think it's a little bit for children, you see? It's more of a hobby. But yeah, if you want to help this page reach out more people, some of the live streams will be published here as well. Please share this page, press like and share it. The other page I would like you then to follow. Again, I don't care about this very much. It's my Instagram. You can easily find me as nelson.ferreira.visual.artist. Not difficult. Instagram is okay. Again, I don't care much about Instagram, but it doesn't really hurt if you press a follow. Now, much more important than Instagram, by far, is LinkedIn. I keep telling everybody that Instagram and Facebook, they're for little kittens, and LinkedIn is for big tigers. LinkedIn is the place, my dear artists, LinkedIn is the place where you can really reach out to very, very powerful, important people in your career. All the company directors, they're on LinkedIn. All the museum directors are on LinkedIn. All the top art gallerists, they're on LinkedIn. They're not on Instagram. That's for children. I'm serious. On LinkedIn, that's where you do real business. So please add me on my LinkedIn. I will accept everybody. As long as you send me a message saying, hey Nelson, I saw your live stream, add me back. Okay, fine. That means you're not a spammer. I will add you. And for the people that are watching through all these other platforms, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, because these lessons were made for YouTube. You need the image quality of YouTube. For example, the next live stream will be 4K high resolution, because I'll be doing a live demonstration. It has to be via YouTube. Also, Instagram cuts the image. You don't see the sides, you only see the vertical middle. Not good. You need the landscape kind of image. So subscribe to this YouTube. So let me just conclude by reading some of the comments, and we will finish the stream. If I can pin the link here on the video. Yes, I will put the links on the text below. On YouTube, it's going to be below the video. I think it's not above the video, it's below. I will put those links. Matteo, always good to see you again, even if it's via text. Thank you as well that you've enjoyed the lesson. I've got a lovely Instagram user that I don't know the name because I can't see the name of Instagram users. Also saying thank you, so thank you back to all of you over Instagram. Arindam, thank you. I'm glad you liked it, that it was a really good lesson. And oh, Matteo, I know, Matteo wrote that it's good to be able to see you again. It reminds me of the Victoria and Albert Museum and the Saatchi Gallery. I miss those times, and I miss you. You know, we have to meet again someday, either in London or in Brazil. Now, we're going to stop the live stream. Dhaka University students, give me 5 minutes and we'll jump into the Zoom session that we have afterwards. Okay? So dear students from Charukola, in 5 minutes time we will enter the Zoom meeting. Everybody else, please like and share this video. If you don't share, I can't do anything. I rely on you. Thanks very much indeed. A big hug to everybody, and I repeat, Dhaka University students, see you in 5 minutes at the Zoom meeting that we have now. Bye!